Welcome to Falling into 40 with Bailey and Jessica.
Okay, welcome back to Falling into 40 with Bailey and Jessica. We are so glad you're here to join us today. Last episode we talked about some challenges or some goals that we have kind of written down, and we're going to check back in with one another and see how we're doing on those things as we go through the end of the school year and throughout the summer. So if you haven't listened to that episode and you want a lighthearted listen, that would be a good one to go to. Today, I think we are going to hit a heavier topic, which is the topic of fentanyl and the widespread prevalence and what it's doing all over the world, but right here in America and in our own backyards. So, Bailey, were you shocked by any of the things that you learned while looking at all the different aspects of fentanyl and what it's doing?
I knew how prevalent it was, but honestly, I didn't realize how many were affected. They say 150 people die daily of fentanyl overdose. And, it's gotten to a point where you can't, it's hard to turn on the news and watch the news without some sort of news story related to it. Or, on social media, there's usually something about it popping up. And then we even were discussing this earlier. It's on our favorite TV shows, our crime shows, those different fictional shows are depicting these stories as well. And so it is there as much as, especially in our small town America, it's not as widely talked about. It's easy to lose sight of that and kind of put on your rose-colored glasses and put up your blinders and not realize that there is an issue.
I think you're exactly right. It is, as much as it is being talked about, and from the articles that I've read and the research that I've done, it's not hard to get your hands on if you are in that kind of business, the drug business, then you certainly know how to get it. And if it's everywhere, if it's all over the United States, that does mean it's in our small communities, in our rural communities, and it's in places that you wouldn't expect it to be in. It's not always going to be the drug houses and those types of places. I think it goes without saying that there are some people that are using drugs and taking pills and doing all kinds of things, in the secrecy of their own home. And the scary part about the availability of fentanyl is, in Texas, I believe there is a group with I don't know if you'd call it their motto or their slogan, but it's one pill can kill. And there are kids that are going to parties, or young adults, and they're buying what they think is maybe, or taking what they think is maybe a Xanax or some other type of pill. And actually, it has been laced with fentanyl. And that one pill can kill. It doesn't always. I don't think the purpose of lacing things with fentanyl is to kill people, because it's obviously for profit. They want people to keep coming back for more and more purchases of their illegal drugs. But that if it has too much in it for that one person's body, then they die immediately and quickly. And I think that is something that we really have to talk about to our kids. If somebody offers you a pill, and it doesn't matter if you trust the person, You don't know where that person got it from. You don't
Mm-mm.
know, you don't take the pill.
Well, and just like everybody's bodies react differently to pharmaceutical drugs, you just never know how the reaction is going to be. And so just being proactive and talking to kids, I'm worried about my kids mostly, not that I feel like they would take it, but how much is happening unknowing to the person who's taken whatever it was. Either it's been put in their drink or something like that. That's more of my worry for my kids than, hey, they're going to take this thing that they think is something else.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. And you mentioned the news having, popping up with stories. I think, yes, there have been lots of stories and where babies have accidentally gotten a hold of a pill that was, laced with it, and they die. You know, real quick, I feel like maybe kids, I could be so wrong, but that kids aren't necessarily drinking alcohol at parties anymore. And maybe they are, but when we were younger, that's what was going on at parties when you were a teenager, was just like lots of alcohol. Now, the more I hear, it sounds more of a pill, like, or or harder drugs.
Right.
Not that I don't like alcohol at parties either for children, but that things like cocaine, which is also horrible, heroin, meth, and pills, are just available. And I think that's pretty scary. I think from what I understand is that fentanyl gets smuggled into the US from Mexico, Canada, and China. And China also gets it to Mexico, which then get it here.
Distribute. Mm-hmm.
Yes, distributed here. So fentanyl is usually produced and trafficked out of China. I didn't know that. I knew that it came from China,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the times it goes straight into Mexico and then is distributed here into the United States. And we live right on the Mexico border. So we live in Texas, and I mean we're right in the line of the ways they could go to get that distributed. And also, I think it's important to remember that it was created in 1959. It's an opioid, but for pain relief, and it's something that they also use in a very pure form in the exact right amount when they're putting a patient to sleep in the hospital for surgeries and things like that. But again, it has been abused, and there's a timeline of different opioids that have gone through and different drugs that have become popular. And right now, fentanyl is what's making the headlines with popularity, and
Mm-hmm.
that's over cocaine, that's over all kinds of things. So it's definitely widespread, and it's killing more than any other drug has ever killed.
I just think that goes hand in hand with potency. In its pure form, it's very potent for pain relief, putting you to sleep, advanced stages of cancer. So you have to think if it is more powerful than morphine, some of the things that I've read, it's 100 times more powerful than a dose of morphine. Just think of how that mixed with another drug is taking that potency up. It said 50 times more powerful than heroin, which is one of the strongest drugs. I'm not a drug expert. I don't know anything about them, but I think of heroin and I think, well, man, that is a serious drug. And this is 50 times more powerful than that. And so the potency factor of it is what I truly believe is leading not only to just the abuse of it and the addiction to it, but as well as the deaths.
Yes. And I think I said a second ago, I want to correct myself real quick. There are some cases of it being smuggled into the United States from Canada, but that's like the least common. I
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the statistics, but mainly it comes from Mexico after China has gotten it into Mexico. It wasn't originally made in China either. So I just want to make sure that I didn't mislead anybody there. But yes, the potency, it's insane. Bailey, did you happen to run across what some of the signs of someone that has taken fentanyl might be?
I did. So the main signs that I found were the small constricted, like the pinpoint pupils, falling asleep or losing consciousness, choking and gurgling sounds, limp body, cold, clammy skin, and then discolored skin, especially the lips and nails.
So what I didn't realize, I didn't know that people just used fentanyl recreationally. I thought it was always laced into things. But there are people that just use fentanyl. But it's important to know what it does to your brain, because not only does it make you feel high, which is why people get addicted to it, clearly. So when it goes into your brain, your opioid receptors are responsible for controlling our breathing and our rate of breathing. So when you take prescribed doses of fentanyl, it can slow down your respiration. Right. But when you take the higher doses, which is what you were just mentioning, the bluish lips, it can cause you to stop breathing. So with the powerful nature of fentanyl, the risk of overdose is extremely increased, which is exactly what you said, by, I can't remember, what was it, 50 times of heroin? Yeah, by taking even other dangerous opioids like heroin. What it does to your brain demonstrates why it does have such a high likelihood of becoming addictive. And that's when the abuse and the dependence start. You get that initial flood of dopamine, and all of a sudden, your mood feels better. And then your brain's wired to want to continue to seek that out. I mean, that's how it works, right? When things bring us pleasure, we go back for more. So fentanyl rewires your brain. And when you take it repeatedly, it rewires your brain to feel that reward system. So you take it, you feel better. You take it, you feel better. Well, suddenly you obviously build a tolerance and how it interacts with your brain. So then you need more of it to feel the euphoric rush, and it changes your brain completely. And then of course you build that tolerance up, and you take more, and you take too much one time, and then you're a statistic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just like you. I really associated it more, mostly just because of the exposure I got to it through media or things like that. I really thought people were unknowingly taking a drug that was laced with it, and that was the bigger issue. I didn't realize that it actually was taken on its own, on purpose. Again, that just kind of shows my ignorance in it all. I a lot of times thought like people were, which I know it is the case a lot of times, and that's what is getting reported, is people are unknowingly taking something that has it in it, and it causes all of the things to happen. But I didn't realize how big of an issue it was with people actually becoming addicted to fentanyl itself. And again, your body can only take so much. So the likelihood of someone, even if it the first time you take it, it doesn't cause death or something horrible to happen to you. Over time, your body can only take so much of something like that before it does affect you and does have those drastic effects.
And it makes you behave. I don't know if this is even acceptable to say, but it makes you behave like a deranged person when you suddenly can't get a hold of the drug that you're addicted to. Right. And then the body goes into withdrawals, and those are dangerous and scary too if they're not in a rehab type setting. So I think what people also need to remember is that good people make bad choices. And sometimes those bad choices get them on a path like this. And if somebody is using and they're using something as dangerous as fentanyl, it is going to change the way they act. And that person that was making good choices is so much more likely to do things that you didn't know that they were capable of, especially if it's in order to get whatever it is that they need. So you can't put your blinders up and say, oh, they would never do that. They're not that type of person. You don't know who they are when they have been under the influence of something as strong as fentanyl and what any human is capable of.
And kind of like you talked about in our human trafficking episode, we think of people who are going to take someone in these scary vans and things like that. You don't think of it being in like a Mercedes or a nice lady or anything like that. That applies to this situation as well. Whereas you hear the word fentanyl, you hear heroin, you hear any type of drug of that manner, and you think this is this terrible rundown party with these scary people doing these drugs. And that is absolutely probably not the case. And a lot of these
Yeah,
are your everyday people who grew up in a small town
it's a
America
business.
as well. You just never know. And so you have to just be aware and help our kids be aware, because my gracious, with all of these things, it is making me concerned and wanting to, be very, very active in making sure that they are aware of the situations that they're put in, because it's so much different than when we were kids. And you have so much more to have to be on high alert about and have to be worried about now than when we were younger. And so just making sure to be proactive. And even though they may think that you're being over dramatic or overly concerned, at this point I don't really care. They're gonna
That's
have to
right.
be they're gonna have to know, and the hard conversations are going to have to be had. So
Yes, I agree with that because you don't want to live in fear. That's
mm-mm.
never a good place to be. But there's a difference between living in fear and also being living in reality. And this is our
Mm-hmm.
reality. And it's there, it's available. I also didn't know how it was taken, like the street form of fentanyl, but just like the other things, it can be injected, snorted, smoked. The patches, like pain
Mm-hmm.
patches, can even be chewed or eaten.
I read that
And
too.
the effects, I didn't realize this either. This was something that I should have said just a second ago. The effects of it occur extremely fast because fentanyl crosses the blood brain barrier much quicker than morphine or other opiates. So people get that high so much faster than they do other drugs. So that does make it a reason why somebody would want to seek it out more than morphine or something or heroin, because it gives you that high so much quicker.
Well, and when it's being added to another drug, just think about that. So you get it quickly, so then your inhibitions are affected, and not knowing how much of even that other drug you are dosing or anything like that, which causes the overdose risk being so much higher as well. So you talked
Totally.
about street names of fentanyl. Here are some of the common street names, and tell me if you've heard any of these before. Apache, China Girl, Chinatown, Dance Fever, Friend, Goodfellas, Great Bear, Heman, Jackpot, King Ivory, Murder 8, and Tango and Cash.
No. I mean, I've heard, like, you're my
That's a
friend,
lot.
Bailey. But yeah, that's a lot. And those are like the code names for street names for,
Yeah.
I
So
mean, I know
if
some
you're
other ones like Molly. So this will tell you how much more prevalent it has become. Overdoses claimed more than 112,000 American lives from May 2022 to May 2023. And that is a 37% increase with the 12-month period ending in May 2020. The most of those people that died were adults, but now they are starting to take our young people's lives. And the monthly total rose from 31 in July 2019 to 87 in May 2021. So, as you can see, that's a lot of it's a lot of Americans' lives. Number one, 112,000 in that previous statement. But that kids,
mm-hmm.
that's a lot of kids. So, they've started doing some studies between age groups and trying to see who's using, what's happening with it. And there is a difference between how adolescents overdose deaths differ from adults when it comes to the way they're taking the drugs, their ethnicity, gender, and they're trying to keep an eye on this because that's what they do. We need research and we need studies and statistics, but it will give us answers to which groups are considered to be at higher risk. And when the CDC examined data for Americans 10 to 19 years old, it found that most adolescents dying from drug overdoses are male, but the share of girls among the fatalities is larger than the share of women. So girls are dying from an overdose over an adult woman.
Right.
This article went to say that more than twice as many boys who are tweens or teens are dying of a drug overdose for every girl in that age group. So the scary part, it's all very scary and it's very serious, and it's something that our country needs to figure out, you know, how do we get rid of it? What do we do? And I'm sure that's easier said than done.
Right.
But it says fentanyl for teens. 84% of fatal overdoses involved fentanyl. 56% of all overdoses involved only fentanyl. And that's scary. And it's one of those things that we can pray over, we can be careful, we need to be educated, we need to be knowledgeable, but our kids have to be all of those things too.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to know, to me, I feel like children, including tweens and teens, are vulnerable, like we said in that other episode, because of their willingness to either please their friends or trust their friends, fit in. They don't want to be the odd girl or boy out. And so we need to be sure that as parents, we just educate them, because it doesn't, you don't know that their best friend can seem like a perfect kid, and the parents, they've got a great family. That doesn't mean that kids don't make bad choices. And so we have to do our part in just being real and saying, there are bad choices that you're going to make, but there are bad choices that could end your life in one
Right.
second. One choice can take your life. And fentanyl, we don't want it to be from fentanyl, or
No.
for taking something that they think is something else and it being laced. And I can say, I can never picture my kids doing that. I don't think they would. But, when I was a kid, I don't think my parents looked at me and said, oh, she's going to be an alcoholic,
Yeah.
So you just don't know.
Well, and you don't know. And that, just to reiterate what you just said about that age group of kids, and with those statistics being so high, that age of kids has a constant need for acceptance. And that need for acceptance can cause even the best of kids to make decisions that maybe they wouldn't normally make, or to go against a rule that maybe is in their household or something like that, just because of one single need. And it may be the only time that they were willing to do something like that. And it it was a detriment. It was a choice that was a detriment. And that's just where we have come into this season, which is kind of the overarching concept for our entire show, which is the season of life that we're in. These are the types of things we have to worry for coming up for our kids, because we're out of that baby toddler stage, giving basic needs every day, giving them what they need. And we're into this. How do we make them go into this world and be successful humans, and to be safe, and to know all the things that they need to know to be citizens of our society? And so that's kind of the stage we're in, and kind of the overarching theme of our show is kind of tackling these issues and things for our kids. So
Yes, it is the season we're in, and it is weird that we're having to tackle these things. But I do urge parents and adults. I mean, you don't have to be a parent to need to know the dangers of all of these things that we're talking about, because most adults have a niece or a nephew or a grandchild or a kid that they know. And so I think it's important to just be aware. I think that what people also need to know is that these some counterfeit pills that are being made look just like their prescription opioids that they know, that they're familiar with, such as oxycodone, oxycontin, Percocet, hydrocodone, Vicodin, Xanax, Adderall. And so they're made to look just like that. But criminal drug networks are mass producing these fake pills, marketing them, and they're even being sold online, and people are finding ways to order them and get them. And they're often sold on social media and e-commerce platforms, and it makes them available to anyone with a smartphone, including our young kids and teenagers. So you should just know, you should really only take legitimate pharmaceutical medications that are prescribed to you by a medical professional, and you get it from a pharmacy. And while that seems like a no-brainer, I think the risk is really great here, that you might get something that you really don't know that you're getting. So no online ordering. Get it from your doctor and from your pharmacy.
I think that's the key, because even as young people off at college, you just never know. And if somebody says, "Oh, if you're going to be up late studying, take this. It'll help you be productive. It'll help you focus." And you take it, and what you don't realize is it has something like that in it. And either you have the effects of it and you want more and you want to take it again, or it could have the detrimental side effects of death or hospitalization or something else lifelong that affects your entire life. And so that is just so important. But like you said, how many good kids could that exact situation happen to?
Yeah, you've got a college kid that is struggling because maybe they have a job that they're working hard at to keep paying their bills, and at the same time they're taking a full load at school, and they're not getting enough sleep, and they think, hey, oh, so and so offered me they had a couple of pills they said I could have, and they said they got it from somebody they really trusted. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, at some point, the chances of you getting something bad if you do it that way are very high,
Right.
especially with what we're reading and seeing. It's out there. and you don't want to get your hands on it. And I found lots of resources for people that are addicted to fentanyl, just like there are places to go for any other kind of addiction. There are places that will treat fentanyl addictions, and you most definitely need to use those resources if you do have an issue, and know that there is a way to get out of the hole that you're stuck in if you are willing to do the work.
And will you be putting those like on our Facebook page? Do you have resources like that?
I will.
Yeah, awesome.
Yes, I will be posting those. And another good one to always know the number to or have in your phone is the poison control. If you have any questions ever, if something's been mixed, and obviously you would call 911 first if you thought there was a potential drug taken or something like that. But just remember that while we don't want anybody to live in fear, we just want you to be knowledgeable. We want our kids to be knowledgeable. We want to be educated, and we want to remember that not everybody is looking for our best interest. And maybe they aren't wanting to hurt you or harm you, but it is a business. Fentanyl is part of a huge industry that's making billions of dollars. So, you know, in the scheme of things, each one of us is nothing when we're talking that much money to somebody. So our best interest is not being looked at by those people. And we just have to be prepared.
I agree. Education and awareness is totally key, especially with us and our children and living in the community we live in. We kind of are often shielded from things like that, and our kids are often shielded from things like that. I don't know if I said those words to my 2 kids, they would know what I was talking about on most of these drugs. Just making sure that they're aware too, because they're going to go out into this big world and get some wake-up calls if they're not aware. So again, like you said, not living in fear, but just making sure we're educated and aware, and that our kids are educated and aware. Because where we live and we're in our little small community, it's very easy to be shielded from things like this, and to want to shield our kids from things like this so that they're unaware. But we can't create ignorance in that way either.
That's right. Knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that this episode was educating for our listeners, and that if you learned something or you didn't learn something, that at least it was a reminder of staying on your toes and being ready to just keep yourself educated, and to protect yourself and your family and your friends, your loved ones.
I know it was very educational for me, because this is not something that I've deep dived into. Like I said, it's always been there. I've read some of the articles, I've seen the news stories on TV, but never have I dived into it to see like what a dramatic issue it is, and truly like how big the numbers are in relation to fentanyl related issues. And so it was really educational for me, digging in and doing the research. And then even some of the things that you brought to the table today were things that I hadn't known or heard before, that I can be more educated on and aware of. So I'm really glad we did this one. Mm-hmm.
I am too. And I learned some things too. And just everybody stay aware, stay educated. And thank you for listening. And we hope you will be back to fall into 40 with us.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in with us on today's episode of Falling into 40. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.